All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are going to wrestle with a puzzle that has been tying the world's greatest minds in knots for, get this, over 2,300 years. It's just a single sentence, but it's a sentence with the incredible power to completely break the rules of logic as we know them. So, let's meet the sentence that broke logic. And here it is. 5 simple words. This sentence is false. This is the classic liar paradox. I mean, look at it. It seems harmless, right? But what you're looking at is basically a logical crime scene. It's a statement that talks about itself, and in doing so, it creates a trap, a contradiction that seems absolutely impossible to escape. So go on, give it a shot. Is it true or is it false? Let's think it through. If we say the sentence is true, well, then what it says has to be correct. And it says it's false. So it has to be false. Uh-oh. Okay, let's try the other way. What if we say the sentence is false? Well, if it's false, then it's describing itself incorrectly, which must mean it's actually true. And there it is. We are stuck in a perfect, inescapable, infinite loop. So what is going on here? To really get it, we need to put on our detective hats and examine this crime scene a little more closely. We've got to figure out exactly how this simple little sentence manages to violate the most fundamental rules of logic. Here's the official rap sheet on our culprit, the liar paradox. You see, its real power comes from how it attacks a core law of classical logic, something called the Principle of Bivalence. Now that sounds fancy, but all it means is that every meaningful statement has to be one of two things, true or false. That's it. No third option, no middle ground. But this sentence, it just refuses to play by that rule. Let's map out that loop we got stuck in. It's so elegant, it's maddening. Look at this table. If you start in that top row, you assume it's true, the logic forces you to conclude that it's false. But if you start in the bottom row and assume it's false, the logic forces you right back around to conclude that it's true. No matter where you start, you end up at the opposite conclusion. It is a perfect logical circle. And that leads us to this absolutely wild conclusion. We have a sentence that is true if and only if it is false. Now, in the world of logic, this isn't just a quirky brain teaser. This is a full-blown crisis. It's called an antinomy. And in classical logic, a single contradiction like this can bring the whole system crashing down. It's something called the principle of explosion, where if you can prove one contradiction, you can then prove anything. The sky is green, 2 + 2 = 5, all of it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, simple. I'll just never write a sentence that talks about itself like that. Problem solved. But oh, the paradox is way more clever than that. It doesn't need to be so direct. It can hide, disguised in a cycle of statements that look perfectly fine on their own. For example, let's say our friend Max here says, the next statement is true. Is that a problem? Nope, not on its own. It's totally harmless. Its truth just depends on whatever is said next. But then Agnes chimes in and says, the previous statement is false. Now we have a problem. Let's trace the logic. If Max's statement is true, then Agnes's statement must be true. But her statement says that Max's is false. That's a contradiction. Okay, so what if Max's statement is false? Well, that would mean Agnes's statement is also false, but her statement says Max's is false. If her statement is false, then Max's must be true. It's the exact same paradox, just sneakily spread out over 2 people. So, if we can't just ban these sentences, what on earth do we do? Well, over the centuries, logicians have come up with some truly brilliant, really audacious escape plans. The catch? Every single one of them comes with a huge cost. To solve the paradox, you have to give up something fundamental, something we really hold dear about either our language or logic itself. And this is the core choice, the fundamental trade-off. It's a dilemma. On one side, we can keep our beautiful classical rules of logic intact, but we have to put strict guardrails on our language to stop it from ever forming the paradox. Or we can let our language be as free and expressive as it wants to be, but then we have to change the very rules of logic to handle the fallout. Let's look at 3 famous attempts to solve this. Okay, 3 big ideas. First up, you've got Tarski's hierarchy. His solution is basically to build a wall. He creates different levels of language and says a sentence on one level can only talk about the truth of sentences on a lower level. The liar sentence, this sentence is false, tries to talk about its own level. So under Tarski's rules, it becomes grammatically illegal. You can't even say it. Then you've got the paracomplete approach from guys like Kripke. Their move is to just call a mistrial. They get rid of the principle of bivalence, that true or false rule, and say the liar sentence is neither. It has no truth value. It falls into a truth gap. And finally, you have the most radical idea of all, the paraconsistent approach. These thinkers just look the contradiction in the eye and accept it. They say, you know what? The liar sentence is both true and false. To prevent logic from exploding, they just change the rules so that one little contradiction doesn't bring the whole house down. Now you'd think, with all those brilliant minds on the case, one of those solutions would have worked, right? Well, this is the big twist in our mystery. The liar paradox, it's a survivor. It always finds a way to come back, often in an even stronger form. Logicians call this the revenge of the liar. Let's look at Kripke's solution, the one that created that third category, undefined. It seems clever, right? But language is also clever. As soon as you create a new category called undefined, we can immediately create a new sentence that talks about it. Look at this monster. This sentence is false or undefined. Now let's try to figure this one out. What if it's true? Contradiction. What if it's false? Contradiction. But what if it's undefined? Well, wait a minute. If it's undefined, then the condition false or undefined is met, which makes the sentence true. And we're right back in a contradiction. The paradox is back. The very act of creating an escape hatch gives the liar a new weapon to attack with. So if these incredibly smart solutions all seem to have a fatal flaw, why do we keep banging our heads against this wall? Well, because the liar paradox is so much more than just a quirky brain teaser for philosophers. It points to something really deep, some fundamental limits baked into the very systems we use to reason about our world. And the truth is, as of today, the case is still very much open. There is no single, slam-dunked, universally accepted solution. What the paradox has really taught us is that whenever we try to build a system of truth and meaning, we are always going to face these unavoidable, difficult trade-offs. You can't have it all. And this isn't just an abstract problem. It has massive real-world implications. In philosophy, it makes us ask what truth even is. In mathematics, this paradox's DNA is all over Gödel's famous incompleteness theorems, which proved that any powerful system of math will always have true statements that it can never prove. And in computer science, these kinds of self-referential loops have very real consequences for how we design databases, programming languages, and even artificial intelligence. So we don't get to end with a neat answer. We end with a huge, lingering question that this paradox forces us to confront. If our most basic tool for thought, language itself, can't even fully and consistently describe its own truth, what other deep and hidden limits might be lurking just beneath the surface of the logical, mathematical, and computational systems that we depend on every single day? It's a puzzle that's still unsolved, a ghost in the machine of logic. And its question is just as urgent today as it was more than 2 millennia ago.